I woke to the sound of breathing. It was faint, shallow but steady, echoing somewhere behind me. My bedroom was dark, the single lamp casting jagged shadows across the walls. I told myself it was nothing, maybe the house settling. But the air felt too heavy, too deliberate. I turned toward the mirror on my dresser. It wasn't unusual. I'd stared at it 100 times. But tonight, something was off. My reflection blinked slowly, deliberately, but I hadn't moved. My stomach tightened. Then I saw it. A face, pale, hollow-eyed, hovered just behind mine in the reflection. Not my brother, not a shadow of the curtains. Just a face. It didn't smile, didn't speak, it stared. And in that stare, I felt every wrong thing the world had ever held. I backed away. The breathing stopped. My pulse hammered in my ears. I wanted to run, but my eyes were glued to the mirror. And then it whispered, just under my breath, "Don't look away." I froze. My own reflection mimicked the whisper, mouth moving, lips trembling in a way mine could not. The air in the room seemed to thicken, pressing against my skin, my chest, my mind. I don't remember how long I stared, but when I finally blinked, the face was gone. Just my reflection, just me. But I knew it had waited, and it was still there, watching. I spent the rest of the night sitting on the edge of my bed, staring at the closed door, listening for any sound that might betray the presence of that face. But the house was quiet, almost too quiet, as if it was holding its breath with me. Morning came with a gray, diffused light slipping through the blinds, and for a moment I allowed myself to believe it had been a dream. By day, my apartment felt normal. The kettle whistled in the kitchen. My neighbor's dog barked from across the hall. The mirrors, every reflective surface in my small apartment, looked like mirrors again. I even laughed at myself, shaking my head as I brushed my teeth, thinking maybe I was letting too much late-night horror movie influence creep into reality. But small things began to unravel that illusion. The first was in the bathroom. I'd stepped out of the shower and caught a movement behind me in the mirror. A flicker, like a shadow slipping across the glass. I spun, heart thudding, and nothing was there. Just the towel rack, the steamy tiles, and the silence. I told myself it was my imagination. I was tired. I had work stress. Rational explanations. Then came the whispers. At first I thought I was hearing things, the kind of half-heard mutters that vanish if you strain to listen. But they grew clearer. Words I didn't recognize, soft and close, always coming when I passed a mirror. Not loud, not threatening. Just insistent. I froze each time, listening, trying to pinpoint the source. Nothing. No one was home. I started avoiding reflections. Not for hours, not for a day. No, every mirror I passed became a source of anxiety. My friends noticed. "Are you okay?" asked Mara when we met for coffee. Her brow was furrowed, but I couldn't bring myself to tell her. She didn't need this. "I'm fine," I said, forcing a smile. "Just tired." Her eyes lingered a little too long. I felt exposed, like she could see right through the thin veil I'd built around normalcy. And maybe she could. It was the third night that broke the line between imagination and reality. I was brushing my teeth, staring at myself in the bathroom mirror. The light was harsh, fluorescent, casting every freckle and crease in stark relief. Then behind me, again the movement, a figure, almost imperceptible, shifting in the reflection. I whirled, but the bathroom was empty. My heart slammed in my chest as I whispered aloud, "Who's there?" No answer, but the mirror. It had an answer. A face appeared. Not mine, not anyone I'd ever met. Hollow eyes, pale skin, lips thin and quivering. It mimicked my stance, tilting its head the way I had. And in a voice barely audible, almost inside my skull, it whispered, "Finally!" I stumbled backward, hands gripping the sink. My apartment suddenly felt foreign. The walls closed in. The air was thick, suffocating. I wanted to scream, but the sound died in my throat. I wanted to run, but my legs wouldn't obey. I only stared, frozen as it leaned closer, its hollow eyes boring into mine. And then, just like that, it was gone. The next morning, I found something else. A note, scrawled in what looked like smudged ink, but it wasn't on any paper I'd seen before. It was just on the fogged bathroom mirror. "You saw me." I scrubbed at it, thinking someone had broken in, played a sick prank. But the ink didn't come off. The mirror reflected only me. And yet the message remained cold and accusing. I didn't tell anyone. Not Mara, not my coworkers, not even the landlord. Who would believe that a reflection could lie, could watch, could speak? The fear wasn't just in the mirrors anymore. It followed me, a shadow behind every glance, every shiny surface. Stainless steel spoons, windows at night, the darkened screens of my phone. Sleep became impossible. Every creak of the floor, every distant hum of traffic sounded like a warning. The shadows themselves seemed to lean closer. I began to question my sanity. Was it in my head, a stress-induced hallucination, or was it something else, something old, something that had been waiting for me to notice? That's when I remembered my grandmother. She'd always spoken in whispers about mirrors, the danger in reflections, the faces that wait. I had laughed as a child, thinking it was superstition, nonsense to scare kids. But now I wasn't so sure. There had always been something in her tone, something insistent, something real. I knew somewhere deep in my gut that whatever I had seen wasn't a one-time event. It was the beginning. The mirror hadn't just shown me a face, it had chosen me. And no amount of rationalization, no amount of prayer or denial could erase the weight of that truth. I didn't know what it wanted. I didn't know if it was a warning, a test, or simply a cruel amusement. All I knew was that it was patient, and patient is far worse than angry. Because patience waits, and waits, until you look again, and I was looking. I stopped leaving the lights off. Every corner of my apartment was illuminated, every reflective surface covered with cloths or turned away. But no matter how careful I was, the feeling of being watched never left. Mirrors weren't just mirrors anymore. They were doors, eyes, windows into a world I couldn't begin to understand. The first night after the note, I slept with the lamp on. But sleep came in fits. Every dream was the same. A face appearing behind mine, whispering words I couldn't understand, the sound echoing in the hollow of my skull. I'd wake drenched in sweat, heart pounding, staring at the empty corners of my room. And yet, when I dared glance at the dresser mirror, the face was sometimes there, sometimes not. Always patient, always watching. I began keeping a journal. Every movement, every whisper, every flicker, it was my way of trying to maintain some control, some evidence that what I was experiencing was real. And it was. I wasn't imagining it. 2 nights later, I caught movement out of the corner of my eye in the kitchen mirror. My reflection stood still, but the figure behind me leaned forward slightly. I spun around. Empty kitchen. A plate set on the counter. Crumbs from breakfast I didn't remember eating. My hand shook as I touched the plate. I had no memory of moving it. I whispered aloud, "Who's there?" No answer. I told myself this was exhaustion. That stress and sleeplessness were playing tricks. But then the voices started. Whispers first, then soft muttering, phrases I almost caught. A name repeated over and over. Mine. I refused to follow the sound, but it seemed to echo everywhere. The hall, the kitchen, the bathroom. Mirrors reflected normal images. But behind them, I imagined something shifting, waiting. I sought advice, not from anyone I knew, but online, in obscure forums for paranormal experiences. People described the same thing. Mirrors that reflect the impossible, faces that weren't there, whispers in the dark. They called it a watcher. Some said it was a spirit, some a curse, some an old evil that preyed on those who saw it. But the details were always chillingly similar. It waited for recognition, and once you acknowledged it, it would linger. That acknowledgement, I realized, was the moment it had chosen me. One evening, a neighbor, Mr. Collins, knocked on my door. He was an elderly man, hunched, with hands shaking like brittle branches. He glanced past me at the windows, then leaned close. "You see it too, don't you?" he asked in a whisper. I don't know what you mean," I stammered. His eyes, sharp despite age, bored into mine. "The mirrors. Don't think it's gone just because it hides. It waits. Patience is the cruelest part. They never leave." I slammed the door. My hands were trembling so badly I could barely turn the deadbolt. Mr. Collins had not been invited in, yet somehow he knew. Somehow, he saw what I was trying desperately to hide, from the world and from myself. Days bled into nights. I avoided mirrors like a plague. But they were everywhere, in the hallways of my building, in shop windows, in cars. Even reflections in metal, water, polished surfaces. Everywhere I went, the weight of unseen eyes pressed down. I felt like I had skin crawling on my back, my own movements being mimicked by something just out of sight. It escalated slowly, insidiously. One morning, I awoke to the sound of something dragging across the floor. My apartment was empty. But when I went to the living room, the cloth covering the full-length mirror had fallen to the floor. My reflection stared back normal at first. Then slowly another pair of eyes appeared behind mine. Not in the reflection of the mirror, it was the mirror itself. Or something inside it. I couldn't look away. I wanted to, desperately, but some part of me couldn't let go. The journal sat on the table. I reached for it, hands shaking. I scribbled almost without thought, "It's inside." It's waiting. It knows. Later I tried calling Mara. My hands hovered over the phone, but I couldn't speak. I imagined the face appearing behind me, closer with every passing second. I ended up putting the phone down without dialing. I didn't eat properly. I didn't sleep properly. My reflection in the coffee mug seemed to linger too long. Faces appeared in darkened windows just for a moment. Faces that were not mine, not human, but impossibly familiar. Then came the flashbacks. I remembered my grandmother's words. I had laughed as a child, thinking they were bedtime stories. "Never look too long in a mirror when no one's around," she'd warned. Some things wait in the glass. They learn patience and they remember faces. Don't give them yours. I had brushed it off. I had mocked her, even teased her with mirrors. And now I realized it had remembered me. I started noticing micro-events. The smallest details, the kind a rational mind would dismiss. But I couldn't. Objects slightly moved from where I left them, sometimes just a tilt of a cup. Sometimes a chair turned 180 degrees, mirrors fogged over in patterns that resembled a face, even when the bathroom was cold, whispers in the hallways, as if someone walked behind me, but when I turned, the corridor was empty, shadows stretching at impossible angles, reflections misaligning with reality. The paranoia became unbearable. I questioned my own sanity. I replayed every moment. Had I imagined the first note on the mirror? Or had it appeared there deliberate, precise, as if the mirror itself had written it? Every time I tried to tell myself it was in my head, the reflections contradicted me. One night I caught something I could no longer deny. I was brushing my teeth, staring at the mirror, trying to ignore it. The reflection shifted independently. My movements were mirrored, yes, but behind me, in the glass, a figure leaned closer. And it was smiling. Not a human smile, but something stretched, thin, predatory. I stumbled back, knocking over the toothbrush holder. The sound echoed, yet the figure remained in the reflection, unharmed, patient. "Don't look away," it whispered. I shut my eyes, forced them open again. The face was gone. My reflection alone stared back, but now I knew. It had been real. I had seen it. And acknowledging it had been the worst mistake of my life. Sleep became impossible. My apartment, once familiar, now felt alien. Every mirror a potential window for intrusion. Every polished surface a waiting face. I spoke less. I left the blinds drawn even in daylight. I moved slowly, cautiously, always aware of the angles, the reflections. I was losing control. I tried reasoning with myself. Perhaps it was a psychological break, the culmination of stress, isolation, and exhaustion. But rationalization failed. Evidence accumulated against me. Objects moved without explanation. Notes appeared. Whispers persisted. And every reflection I avoided seemed to follow me still. The most terrifying moment came when I caught it moving with purpose. My reflection in the hallway mirror lagged behind my movements by a fraction of a second. Then it smiled. Slowly, deliberately, just before I could, I froze. The realization hit like a fist. The thing in the mirrors was learning, adapting, waiting, watching. I wasn't imagining it anymore. I wasn't tired or stressed. I was hunted, and yet it didn't attack. Not yet. It was patient, and patience. Patience was worse than any scream. Micro-events, dialogue, and suspense included here. Neighbors, caretakers warning, Mr. Collins' cryptic knowledge, flashbacks, grandmother's warnings, childhood memories, paranoia building, movement of objects, whispers, reflection anomalies, sparse dialogue, impactful, unsettling, like Mr. Collins' lines and whispers from the mirror, psychological dread, protagonist losing control, questioning sanity, slowly realizing the entity is intelligent and patient. This naturally sets up the story for the climax, 2,500 to 3,000 words, where the confrontation with the mirror's entity and the protagonist's psychological breaking point will occur. The night was silent, but I knew it was watching. I hadn't left my apartment in 3 days. The blinds were drawn tight, every reflective surface covered with towels and sheets. Even my phone, my last connection to the outside world, sat face down on the table. But the air was thick, heavy, waiting. I sat on the couch, knees drawn to my chest, listening. The apartment felt alive in a way that no human presence could explain. Floorboards creaked, not under my weight, but elsewhere. Something moved just out of sight. I told myself to be calm, rational. It was just my mind. Just stress. But my own reflection on the glass tabletop opposite me grinned. Not me, not human. Teeth thin and jagged, eyes hollow and black. It leaned closer, mimicking my breathing. I screamed. The sound tore through the silence, ricocheted off the walls, and yet it didn't answer. Or maybe it did. I heard a whisper, not from the reflection, but from inside my head. Finally, I staggered back, knocking over a lamp. The light flickered and went out. In darkness, the whispers grew louder, chanting in a rhythm I didn't recognize but understood all the same. Hunger, patience, inevitability. My knees buckled and I sank to the floor. I tried to call out, to scream for help, but my voice was gone, stolen before it left my lips. Then I realized the reflections weren't confined to mirrors anymore. The window reflected not the street outside, but a hallway that didn't exist, and in it, dozens of faces stared at me. Hollow eyes, pale skin, lips quivering as though they were learning to speak. They moved just out of sync, mimicking me, mocking me. I backed into the bedroom. Sheets hung from every mirror like crude barriers, but the reflections still seeped through, bending around the cloth. My dresser mirror, the first one I had noticed it in, shivered like a disturbed pond. Ripples formed, and the face I had first seen emerged, closer than ever. "You can't hide," it hissed. I ran. The hallways of my apartment stretched impossibly long, doors where there were none, reflections multiplying endlessly. The living room I had known was gone, replaced with dark corridors lined with mirrors. I screamed, but the sound echoed back, altered. My voice slowed, distorted, twisted into something mocking. I tripped, falling against the cold surface of a mirror. My hands hit the glass, and it was warm. Not just warm, but alive, pulsing with something malignant. My reflection reached out. Not me, something else. Something patient. It whispered my name. "I'm here," it said. "We've waited." I slammed my eyes shut. When I opened them, I was no longer in my apartment, or at least not entirely. The air smelled metallic, sharp, and the space was impossible. Reflections surrounded me on all sides, walls, floor, ceiling. And in every one it waited, that first face grinning wider, and behind it dozens more. All familiar, all twisted, all patient. I tried to speak, to bargain. I don't understand." "What do you want?" The whisper came from every direction, every reflection speaking at once. You wanted to look. Now we look at you." I ran again, or thought I did. The hallways twisted and stretched, the floor tilting like water. My footsteps made no sound, but I felt each one reverberate through me. A reflection lunged from the glass beside me. Hollow hands pressed against the surface as if it were liquid. I screamed and turned, only to find it was my own reflection. But the smile was wrong. It wasn't mine. Panic consumed me. I screamed for Mara, for anyone. "Help me, someone, please." But the sound was swallowed, replaced by the whispers of hundreds of faces, muttering, chanting, laughing. I stumbled into the kitchen. The table was there, the chairs too, but the reflections, they were wrong. My coffee mug reflected me, yes, but in its surface, the entity, my reflection's double, held a knife. I didn't have one. My hand shook uncontrollably. The knife moved closer, cutting across the surface of the reflection. A drop of blood appeared, trickling down the glass. I reached out instinctively, and pain lanced through my hand, burning, cold, impossible. I tried to fight, to destroy the mirrors, but every shattered piece only multiplied the reflections. Every shard held another version of me, another face waiting. I realized then this was no longer a mirror. It was a doorway, a prison, and I was the only inmate. The face I had first seen emerged from the largest mirror, the dresser mirror. Its eyes locked onto mine. It whispered slowly, deliberately, "Do you see us now? Do you understand?" I nodded, even though it didn't matter. I was too terrified to move. I tried to speak. I do, I managed. 1,000 mouths opened behind it, all whispering, all echoing the same truth. You're ours. Always. The hallway shifted beneath me. I fell, hands scraping against the floor, only to find the floor was a mirror itself. Reflections rose from the surface, reaching toward me, enveloping me, pulling me into the cold, liquid glass. I screamed, but even the sound was reflected back as laughter. I clawed, kicked, tried to drag myself free, but every effort was mirrored, doubled, multiplied. The entity moved with me, anticipating my every motion. The walls of my apartment had melted into this infinite corridor of mirrors. The air pressed down, thick, cold, alive. I realized then that escape was impossible. The first face leaned closer. Its eyes bored into me, hollow and infinite. Its mouth opened. Look at me. Remember me. Never forget. I couldn't look away. My own eyes were locked onto the reflection, my mind fracturing under the weight of the countless faces. They whispered my failures, my fears, my guilt. Every thought I had was echoed back, twisted and magnified. And then, the worst realization, I had always been seen. Before the note, before the first glimpse. It had been there, patient, watching, waiting for me to acknowledge it. And now I had a time-lost meaning. Seconds stretched into eternities. I felt myself being pulled into the mirror, my body dissolving into glass. My reflection, not mine, replaced me, grinning hollowly. The last thing I saw before I was gone entirely was the apartment. Empty, silent, but the mirrors. Alive, patient, watching, always waiting for the next glance, the next curiosity, the next soul, somewhere behind the glass. I knew they smiled, and the first face, patient as always, whispered, finally, I was gone. But the reflections remained. Climax highlights, narration heavy horror, psychological collapse, environment warping, infinite reflections, dialogue-driven terror, entity speaking, whispers echoing personal, intimate threats, cinematic tension, collapsing apartment, impossible hallways, reflections moving independently, psychological breaking point, protagonist's mind fractures, loses sense of reality, physically consumed, horror escalation, patient entity closes in, mirrors as portals, protagonist powerless. The apartment was quiet. Too quiet, the kind of silence that presses against your ears and chest, leaving an empty ache behind. Neighbors noticed only that I had vanished, left no note, no message, no clue. Some called the police. Some whispered that I had simply left, maybe moved in with family. But the mirrors told another story. Weeks passed. My friend Mara tried to check in. She knocked on the door once, twice. No answer. The apartment seemed abandoned. She shivered when she peered through the blinds. Every reflective surface inside, the glass coffee table, the kitchen sink, the bedroom dresser, was covered in layers of cloth and sheets. But she couldn't shake the feeling that eyes were behind them, waiting, watching. She didn't touch the mirrors. She didn't need to. They were alive in a way that made her skin crawl. The landlord finally entered after a week, checking the apartment for maintenance issues. He left shaking his head, mumbling about drafts, weird cold spots and shadows that moved just out of sight. He refused to go near the mirrors, and yet the mirrors weren't empty. They never were. I was still there. Not in body, not in a way anyone could see, but my mind, or a part of it, was trapped in the reflections. Every mirror, every window, every polished surface that reflected light held me, and the countless faces I had seen before me. Faces patient, hollow, infinite. Faces that had taught me what it meant to wait. I tried to fight, tried to scream, tried to reach out beyond the glass, but sound didn't travel. My voice was trapped with me, distorted, echoing across the endless corridors of mirrored reality. The first face, the one that had chosen me, hovered close, patient, omnipresent. Its hollow eyes bored into mine. Do you understand now? It whispered. I understood. The mirrors were never just glass. They were windows, doors, vessels for something older, something patient, something inevitable. They waited for those who looked too long, who sought meaning and reflection. And when they found you, when they saw that flicker of curiosity or fear, they remembered. They waited. Mara never saw me. She didn't need to. But sometimes when she passed a mirror in a store or glanced at a polished table in a cafe, she felt eyes on her. Brief, impossible, familiar, the way a reflection can watch without moving. She shook her head and walked faster, dismissed it as imagination. But we both knew. Some things, once seen, never forget. In the apartment, weeks turned into months. Mirrors that had once been ordinary became gateways. The entity spread quietly, subtly, through each reflective surface. I was forced to witness new arrivals, people who stared too long, who glanced with curiosity, who dared to seek the impossible. The faces multiplied, and my own became just another hollow echo among them. I began to understand the rules. Do not turn away too quickly. Do not challenge. Do not attempt to flee. Recognition is the key. Once acknowledged, the waiting begins. Patience is the only law. And the law is absolute. Time stretched strangely. Days had no meaning. Weeks melted into each other. The mirrors reflected scenes from the outside world, but twisted. The city streets seemed endless, flowing into infinite corridors. People walked normally, unaware. Some passed a window and paused briefly, sensing something, then moved on. None lingered long enough to see the truth. None survived the acknowledgement. I watched them, observed, powerless. I tried to warn, to scream through the glass, but the whispers consumed my voice, bending words into fragments I could barely recognize. And yet a strange calm settled over me. I realized that fear had limits, but patience did not. The entity, the mirrors, the faces, they had all existed longer than I could comprehend. I was only a new thread in an endless tapestry. Occasionally, I glimpsed familiar shapes, Mara's shadow, Mr. Collins' frail form, the friends who had once tried to reach me. I wanted to speak, to warn, to touch reality again, but my arms dissolved into reflections before they could reach anything real. And when I tried to focus, my mind was drawn back to the first face, smiling as though it had waited eons for me to finally surrender. I realized that surrender was not defeat. It was acknowledgement, understanding, acceptance. I would not escape. I would not be freed. I was, like the others before me, part of the patient waiting, a presence in the mirrors, ready to watch the next soul who looked too long. Some nights, I remember my old apartment as it was. I see the sheets covering the mirrors, the cold light of the ceiling lamp, the faint hum of electricity, and I wonder if anyone else will stumble here, if the next curious glance will pull them in. I feel the excitement of the entity, patient, inexorable, ready to teach the next observer the rules I have learned. I hear their whispers sometimes, carried across the glass. Do you see us now? Patience is everything. Finally, Mara moved away eventually. She never spoke of mirrors again. But I know she thinks of them. Every reflective surface becomes a question in her mind. Is it just me, or is it watching? In the apartment, the mirrors reflect. My presence is everywhere and nowhere. Faces that were human now twist, hollow and patient. The first face smiles, and I smile with it, because I have learned that fear is temporary, but patience is eternal. The final lesson is simple. Do not stare too long. Do not acknowledge, for when you do, the waiting begins, and the waiting never ends. Even now I feel it. Behind every glass, every polished surface, the shadows and reflections stretch, patient, hollow, watching. I am part of it. You are next. Somewhere beyond your awareness, I see you, and I wait finally.